One glance, and everything shifts. Something dies forever, but in its place, something else is born, colder, sharper, more dangerous. From that moment on, it's not about recovery. It's about preparation, not tears, but calculations. Some believe pain fades. Others think betrayal is forgotten. But they have no idea what someone is capable of when they survive out of spite. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. The moment I knew, truly knew, that my marriage was dead is carved into my memory with a clarity that feels clinical. There was no screaming match, no explosive discovery of betrayal. It happened quietly, insidiously, beneath the harsh fluorescence of a hospital room at 2:30 in the morning. I was fighting to breathe, chest heaving, lungs burning, while my wife, Sienna, casually scrolled through TikTok, the glow of her phone painting indifference across her face. What crushed me wasn't just her detachment. It was the sudden hyper-awareness that descended on me. The sterile smell, the rhythmic blip of machines, the crushing emptiness that seemed to radiate from inside my bones. But to understand, let me take you back. I'm Julian, 32, a mechanical engineer, and up until that night, a husband who confused blind loyalty with love. Sienna and I had been married for 6 years. In the beginning, I admired her ambition, her unshakable determination to bulldoze through obstacles. It took time for me to recognize that somewhere along the line, I had become one of those obstacles. Her priorities shifted toward chasing promotions, building an online persona, and collecting praise from virtual strangers. Any small request I made felt like an inconvenience to her. 3 weeks before I ended up in that hospital bed, I began dealing with a relentless fatigue and an aching in my body that wouldn't go away. When I mentioned it, her reactions became a predictable loop of dismissal. "You're exaggerating," she'd say, barely lifting her eyes from her phone. Then the fever started, soaking sweats, chills that rattled my bones, and vivid, terrifying nightmares. Her response? "Take some Tylenol. Don't wake me unless it's serious." That was our routine, me suffering in silence, her brushing it all off as an annoyance. Then came the night everything spiraled. I woke up and couldn't feel the right side of my body. The room swayed, my heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I called her name, panicked. She turned, barely. "You're not a kid," she said. "Figure it out." Then she rolled over and went back to sleep. Time blurred, seconds stretched into hours, as I fumbled for my phone with clumsy, unresponsive hands. Somehow I managed to call Ariana, my older sister, my emergency contact, the only person who ever showed up without needing to be asked. She lived almost an hour away, but made it in just over 20 minutes. When she arrived, I was drenched in sweat, shaking, barely coherent. Sienna made a half-hearted attempt to object when Ariana said I needed to go to the ER. "You're playing into his drama," she scoffed, waving us off like we were disrupting a dinner date. At the hospital, words like sepsis, organ failure, and unstable vitals filled the room and froze my insides. My fever had hit 104.2 degrees, and my blood pressure was plummeting. They rushed me into ICU, hooked me up to fluids and antibiotics, and scanned my body for damage. The next few days passed in a haze, flashes of ceiling tiles, mechanical beeps, and blurred faces moving around me. Ariana never left. She slept upright in a chair, held my hand when I shook, and spoke calmly when the fear overtook me. "Sienna?" She stopped by twice. The first visit she complained about the parking situation. The second time she dropped off a coffee that had gone cold and sat beside me scrolling Instagram while I lay there, barely able to move. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. The fifth night in ICU delivered the final blow. I was semi-conscious, floating somewhere between waking and sedation. My fever had dipped slightly, but my body still felt like lead. Every movement was a monumental task. Then I heard footsteps, and a voice I hadn't heard in years. It was David, my cousin. We'd grown up like brothers, though life had pulled us in different directions. I'd chosen structure and stability. David had chased charm and freedom, always ducking responsibility with a grin. "He doesn't look good," he said softly, somewhere near my bedside. I heard Sienna reply, voice flat and annoyed. "Yeah, but he's stable now." There was no comfort in her tone, no concern, just a trace of irritation, like someone inconvenienced by bad timing. I forced my eyes open. Everything was blurred, but I could just make out her shape, leaning against the hospital bed, arms folded, dressed like she was going out. David stood a little too close. "We should talk outside," he whispered. "He's not even conscious," Sienna answered. "Can't move a muscle." Then she tossed her phone onto the bed and exhaled sharply. "You came all this way. I want to see you." Her words landed like a wrecking ball. She hadn't brought him to visit me. He was there for her. I don't know whether he came out of guilt, obligation, or something else, but it didn't matter anymore. Her phone buzzed again. "Just turn it off," David said gently. His tone shifted, lower now, the same voice he used back when we were kids, whenever we were about to do something we shouldn't. "No distractions," he added. Then I felt, rather than saw, his hands on her waist, guiding her away from the foot of my bed. I wanted to move, to shout, to do anything, but my body betrayed me. I was paralyzed by infection and disbelief. "Here?" Sienna asked, half whispering, a mix of thrill and disbelief in her voice. "He can't see," David said. "He won't know a thing." And that was it. The moment the veil was ripped away. There was no coming back from that. The reality of my marriage, laid bare in the worst possible way. "But what if he's barely hanging on, Sienna?" Her laughter sliced through me like a scalpel. My chest heaved, heart hammering beneath the frail skin of my ribs, while the machines chirped and beeped in anxious rhythm. I wished for someone, anyone, to walk in and break the moment. But the door remained shut. Out in the hallway, the ICU carried on with its usual chorus, soft footsteps, muffled voices, but no one paused to check on the dying man behind curtain 3. I heard it. The sound of their mouths, wet and vile, a kiss that made bile rise in my throat. I tried to scream, to whisper, to grunt, anything, but the raw agony in my throat reduced every effort to a rasping wheeze. They didn't notice. Or maybe they just didn't care. Behind the curtain, their outlines melded into one another. Quiet gasps, low whispers. I couldn't see much, only flashes caught in the corner of my vision, but I understood exactly what was happening. My wife, my own cousin, together, in the same room where I lay fading, and all I could do was listen. A chilling dread settled over me, infecting every nerve like poison. The slow, robotic beeping of the monitor filled the air between their shifting bodies and shallow breaths. Sienna stifled a moan. I glimpsed David's shoes shuffle closer, two silhouettes drawing into one. My body shook beneath the blanket, part fever, part fury burning white-hot in my blood. To them, I was already gone, just a body occupying space, a form, not a man. The whole encounter didn't last long, yet it stretched endlessly, each heartbeat a measure of betrayal. When they finished, Sienna exhaled sharply. "We should probably head out," she murmured with a smirk I could hear. "Someone could walk in." David gave that infuriating laugh of his, the same smug chuckle from when we were kids and thought we were untouchable. He buttoned his shirt in the reflection of a cabinet door, then glanced my way. I clenched my eyelids shut, praying he saw nothing but blankness. "He's just lying there," he muttered. Creeps me out. Relax, Sienna whispered. He's not going anywhere. They left together, arms entwined, while I remained there, trapped inside my own body, drowning in the cold mechanical hum and the brutal sting of betrayal. I can't even begin to describe what brewed inside me. Fury, heartbreak, disgust, and something else, an ember that flared into a burning resolve. I would not let them win. I would survive. I would come back from this. And when I did, there'd be hell to pay. Exactly 1 week later, they released me from the hospital. Sienna arrived like it was a chore she'd been guilted into. You better be grateful, she said with a huff as we drove off. I canceled my lunch plans for this. I kept my expression blank, passive, meek. No sign that I knew, no sign of the truth I carried in silence. My body was weak, still trembling from the time I'd spent confined to bed. But my mind? My mind was a blade, honed to a fine edge. When we got home, she dumped me onto the couch like excess luggage and disappeared into the bedroom without a backward glance. I'm not your maid, she yelled from the hallway. Figure it out if you need something. That single sentence made my fingers clamp around the couch cushions until the pain drowned out everything else. But I stayed still. Not yet. If I made a move now, I'd lose the only advantage I had. Time. I needed to rebuild. Then, when I was ready, I'd act. And I would be merciless. I wasn't always like this. I used to believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. I was the mediator in the family, the one who patched rifts and sought harmony. That's why I let Sienna's bitterness slide, assuming her edges would dull with time. After our father died, Mom barely kept it together, and my sister, Ariana, and I leaned heavily on one another. We even tried to help David, our charming, broken cousin with a tragic past and a smile that could convince anyone of anything. Looking back, he and Sienna were always destined for destruction, both calculating, both selfish in the most seductive ways. I was the one who introduced them, thinking I was building stronger family ties. A summer barbecue 2 years ago, I missed the early signs. I ignored the way her laughter lingered too long after his jokes, the way he hovered near her whenever I stepped away. I didn't see it. Her family didn't help either. The Albrights never approved of me. I wasn't flashy enough. I didn't have the right pedigree, just a mechanical engineer with stable hands and a quiet heart. That wasn't enough for them. On the surface, they smiled. Underneath, their words were laced with disdain. That disdain rubbed off on Sienna. She reminded me often enough how dull I was. When I ended up hospitalized, their concern was lukewarm at best. Her brother Kevin sent a generic text. Her mother, Sylvia, called once. "We hope you're managing," she said, voice flat. Then came the barb. "Sienna's under so much stress handling everything. Try not to be a burden." No visits, no flowers, just silence. Over the following days, I watched them all with new eyes. Sienna made her usual calls to her mother, laughing about work, gossiping, never mentioning me, unless it was to complain about how pathetic I looked on the couch. Her father, Landon, wasn't much better. Distant, cold, still clinging to the illusion that his daughter was some flawless jewel. When he did speak to me, it was with that sanctimonious air he'd always worn like cologne. "Keep your chin up, son. Don't weigh Sienna down while you heal." I barely responded. They had to think I was broken. I needed them to believe I had shut down, beaten, withdrawn, hollowed out by everything that happened. What they couldn't see was the quiet fire I was nursing beneath the surface. Just days after leaving the hospital, I began physical therapy. My right leg and arm had nerve damage that made balance a constant struggle, but I hid the frustration beneath calm, measured smiles. Malik, my therapist, guided me through the pain with steady patience. While Sienna scrolled endlessly on her phone or slipped out of the house without a word, I combed through our finances night after night. The red flags were everywhere, Lavish spa visits disguised as work expenses, bar tabs tied to hotels, charges that made no sense unless you knew what to look for. She never thought I'd go digging. I also started looking into David, his flashy Mustang, leased under outrageous terms, his job history, all over the place, his social media, a stream of designer watches and overpriced dinners, all surface, no substance. Ariana could tell something had shifted in me. One afternoon as she dropped off groceries, she paused. "You're different," she said. "Is that just recovery talking?" I offered a faint smile. "Just tired," I said, trying to stay on track. She didn't entirely buy it, but she didn't press. Her eyes swept across the apartment. Sienna's stuff was scattered everywhere, like confetti after a party. Mine was boxed up in corners, as if I barely existed in the space. "If you need anything," Ariana said, pulling me into a warm hug, "I'm here." I held on to that. I'd need it later, once everything started to unravel. It had been a month since I'd left the hospital. I was driving again, cautiously, but independently. That weekend, I picked my moment. It was a breezy Saturday, sunlight filtering in through the windows. Sienna sat sprawled on the couch, thumb glued to her phone. I took a steady breath. "We should probably talk about where this is going," I said evenly. She didn't even flinch. "Oh my God, are we still talking about the hospital?" She groaned, eyes still on the screen. "I told you, it was a high-pressure time." "It was an important deal," she added, but I cut her off, my voice cold and controlled. "Sienna." That made her look up. She froze, sensing something different. I kept going, voice lower now. "I almost died." "But you didn't," she shot back, tossing her phone aside with dramatic flair. Her eyes rolled. "You're fine. Why are we still dragging this out?" Her face was unreadable. No guilt, no pause, just emptiness. My jaw tightened as the sound of that hospital night rang in my memory. Her, him. I locked my expression. "If that's really how you see it, then this is done. I'm leaving." I stood, legs unsteady but holding. For the first time, I saw flickers of surprise cross her face. "Wait, leaving, like leaving. Divorce?" she asked, stunned. "Because I was under pressure while you were recovering?" She folded her arms, voice hardening. "You're bluffing. You can't manage on your own. Where are you even planning to go?" I nearly smiled, but stopped myself. "Not yet," I thought. "That's not your concern," I replied softly. "I'm finished." "Don't be stupid," she snapped. "You've got no backup plan, no apartment. You think you can cover rent and hospital bills all by yourself? You'll be crawling back in no time." I didn't answer. I just took my keys and stepped out to my beat-up car, letting the door close behind me. Once I was out of her line of sight, I ducked behind the garage and crouched low, listening. Right on cue, she stormed to the window, peering out. She didn't see the car, and her expression twisted with confusion. I stayed still, controlling my breathing. After a few minutes, she turned away. A moment later, my phone buzzed. It was David. "Yo, man. Been a minute. Want to meet up?" I stared at the message. The audacity. They both thought I was some weak thing to step over, someone too shattered to fight back. They had no idea what I was putting in motion. I began fading from Sienna's life completely. Publicly, I told her I was crashing with a friend for space and perspective. In reality, I was living at Ariana's. She offered me peace, never demanded details. I needed that quiet. Meanwhile, I began repositioning everything. First, the finances. I moved my paychecks out of our shared account gradually. Sienna had already burned through her half on nonsense. I left just enough to avoid suspicion. Then came allies. I reached out to Roman, an old college friend with a gift for hacking through digital noise. He dug up dirt on David, spiraling debt, shady side gigs, a car he couldn't afford to insure. Then I set the trap. I texted David, playing dumb. "Hey man, Let's take a trip, clear our heads, see some old places. He agreed without hesitation, maybe thinking I still didn't know, or maybe just eager to flaunt. Meanwhile, Sienna's online presence shifted, cryptic posts about taking time to heal, carefully curated to hide the truth. Her parents wrapped her in support, oblivious to the reality. I hadn't been abandoned. I'd walked away, and I wasn't looking back. By the time I could trust myself behind a steering wheel, or throw a fist if it came to that, I'd worked out every last detail. Any trace of forgiveness had been scorched away, leaving only fury. The day it all kicked off didn't hint at what was coming. Sunlit skies, a breeze just warm enough to feel like things might turn around. I shot David a message. Let's finally hit that road trip today. Couldn't ask for better weather. He got back fast. I'm down. Meet at mine in an hour? I pulled into the lot outside his apartment in a beat-up SUV I'd scored, thanks to one of Roman's connections. No ID, no paperwork, no questions. David stood beside his gleaming, over-the-top blue Mustang, head down, thumbing his phone. "Long time, man," he called, flashing a grin. But there was something in his eyes, something cautious. He clocked the weight I'd lost, the worn-out look. "You're looking better," he added, testing the waters. "Thanks," I said, keeping it tight. "We straight, cousin?" he asked, stepping in for one of those awkward hug-handshake things. I forced a smile. "Course we are. Why wouldn't we be?" He paused, just long enough to wonder, but whatever doubt he had got buried under his usual swagger. We got into his Mustang. David refused to let me drive, of course, and fired up the engine like he was on a racetrack. Classic. He'd poured every dime into that car, but could barely make rent. We cruised out of the city, winding through rural roads that stretched like ribbons through nowhere. I made small talk, asked about his latest job. He launched into some spiel about a flashy new startup gig a buddy lined up for him. I nodded, threw in a chuckle when it made sense. Meanwhile, my focus stayed on the GPS Roman had hidden under the seat. He and two of my guys were tailing us in the SUV, far enough back not to spook him. They only knew fragments of what I had planned, just enough to play their part without catching heat if things blew up. After about an hour, the road thinned into an isolated stretch, trees hemming us in on both sides. No other cars. Perfect. "Pull over," I said, acting casual. "Need to take a leak." David frowned. "Out here?" "Can't wait," I said, pointing at a narrow dirt trail. "There's a spot just ahead." He muttered something about dust ruining his paint, but veered off anyway. We jostled down the path until we reached a clearing. I got out, pretending I was heading for the trees. Right then, the SUV eased into view, headlights off, almost silent. David turned toward me and I saw it. The shift. A flicker of fear, sharp and sudden. "Julian, what's going on?" I stepped out from behind the trunk, expression hardened into something unfamiliar to him. Two of my guys got out, calm and purposeful. David lurched for the car door, panic kicking in. "Julian?" His voice cracked. "Don't!" I snapped. He froze. Santiago, tall, solid, unhurried, stepped behind the Mustang, sealing off his only escape. Roman came around the front, hands loose, eyes cold. "You're not going anywhere, David," I said, tone flat as ice. David looked from one face to the next, a fake laugh escaping his throat. Okay. Is this some kind of prank? What's the joke?" "You think it felt funny?" I growled, stepping in close. "When you and Sienna thought my hospital bed made a great backdrop for your little secret?" His jaw dropped. This time the fear hit home. Real. Raw. Julian, man, I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "You do. Don't lie. I heard you. Every single word." I grabbed his shirt collar, yanking him forward. The rage inside me ignited, wild and unchecked. My body still bore the aftershocks of illness, but the rage, months of it, gave my grip a terrifying strength. He fought back, trying to pull away. "Let go," he choked. "We're blood, Julian." I slammed him against the Mustang. "Blood," I repeated, voice laced with venom. I used to think that mattered. His eyes darted around, searching for help. There was none. Just me, Roman, Santiago, another guy, standing guard, the only road out, cut off by the SUV. "I'm sorry," David whimpered. It happened, all right? We weren't thinking. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I hissed. "Forgetting someone's birthday is a mistake. What you did? That was a decision. You made it. So did she. While I was fighting to stay alive, tubes everywhere, heart barely holding on, you two were hooking up." He shoved at me, desperate. I responded with a punch to the gut that crumpled him. He gasped, coughing hard, trying to breathe. It wasn't over, not even close. The fury surged hotter, my vision tinged red at the edges. The others held back, letting me finish what I'd started. I dragged David up and flung him to the ground. He hit the dirt hard, skidding across gravel, hands torn and bleeding as he scrambled back. "Julian, man, hold on. Can we just talk?" he pleaded. "Talk?" I said, closing the distance one slow step at a time. "Like how you talked to Sienna, when you thought I was unconscious?" The memory ripped through me again. Laughter, moaning, her voice, his voice. That betrayal. And the fire in me roared back to life, hotter than hell. I closed the distance and drove my boot straight into his ribs. He let out a guttural scream, crumpling to the ground, clutching himself in agony. "We'll talk after you've tasted even a sliver of what I endured," I growled, my voice shaking with fury barely held in check. Behind us, David's beloved Mustang purred quietly, unaware that its fate was sealed. Roman and I locked eyes. He didn't speak, just reached into the back of the SUV and handed me a crowbar. David saw it and froze, terror flashing across his face. "No. Come on, man. Don't. Please." He staggered as he tried to stand, coughing, pain in every movement. I dragged my fingers across the pristine surface of his Mustang. This wasn't just a vehicle to him. It was his pride, his vanity, the shell of his identity molded into metal. "This is everything to you, isn't it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's just a car," he shouted, desperation cracking his voice. "I can fix it, all right? Just, please don't." But I wasn't listening anymore. The crowbar swung through the air and shattered the driver's window with a violent crash. The glass exploded inward, glittering shards spilling across the leather. David screamed, but whether it was sorrow or physical pain, I couldn't tell. I didn't stop. I circled the car like a hurricane, bringing ruin with every swing. The hood, the windshield, the side mirrors, each hit echoed like a drumbeat of destruction, the metal howling beneath the crowbar's fury. When I was finished, the Mustang was unrecognizable, its once sleek body now a battered carcass. David collapsed, knees hitting dirt, sobbing. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, and his ribs were already darkening with bruises. He kept begging, words slurred through tears. "Julian, please, I'm sorry. Just stop. I'll do anything." The crowbar slipped from my fingers, hitting the ground with a dull thud. My chest heaved, lungs burning like I'd run for miles. I felt triumph and revulsion battling in my gut. Some part of me wanted to end it, make it unforgettable, leave him with scars he'd carry forever. But something sour crawled up my throat. Revenge didn't taste sweet. It felt like poison. "I'm not done," I muttered. He flinched, trying to shrink into what was left of the Mustang. "You can still stand. Get up. Fight me." "Julian, I can't." "Get up!" I roared, grabbing the front of his shirt and hauling him to his feet. He threw a punch, weak and wild. I slipped past it and drove a fist into his jaw. He dropped instantly, crying now without restraint. Around us, my friends stayed vigilant. Santiago's eyes flickered with something like pity. He thought I'd gone far enough. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I reached through the shattered remains of the car's interior, pushing aside jagged glass and warped plastic until my fingers found what I was after. The key, tucked in its usual hiding spot. I held it up, then let it fall at David's feet. "The next time you even think about coming near me," I said, voice cold as steel, "you remember this. Remember what I could have done. Remember that I let you walk away." He didn't respond, just stared up at me, horror etched into his face. I turned my back and walked away. Roman and Santiago followed without a word. The SUV's engine came to life, breaking the silence as we pulled away, leaving David broken and bleeding in the dust, surrounded by the twisted remains of everything he once worshipped. The following day, something gnawed at me, an itch I couldn't ignore. I needed closure, so I found myself heading back to Sienna's. I still had a key. Part of me expected she'd changed the locks. Of course she hadn't. Typical Sienna, too proud, too confident. The door creaked open as I stepped inside. Dirt clung to my clothes, my knuckles still bruised and swollen. She was on the couch, absorbed in her phone. She glanced up, unimpressed. "You again?" she said, her tone flat. "What now?" I didn't move. The tension in the room was thick, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. My insides churned. Everything that happened with David had started here, with her. She'd ripped apart my trust and left me hollowed out, barely human. "I know," I said quietly. She didn't look up. "Know what?" "About you and David. About the lies. You turned our life into a joke." She shrugged, barely interested. "So what? It was falling apart anyway." I blinked, stunned by the emptiness in her voice. How could she be so indifferent? I stepped forward, blocking her view of the screen, made her see me. "Do you even remember what for better or worse means?" I said. "It means you don't disappear when your husband's in a hospital bed. It means—" She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Don't start preaching to me about vows." Her eyes burned with contempt. "You think I cheated because you're some kind of saint? No, Julian, you're dull, predictable, a dead end. That's why I left." My hands curled into fists. I was shaking. "You don't feel anything? Not even guilt?" She rolled her eyes. "God, you're always like this. Overdramatic. Our marriage was dying. You drained me. If you wanted to leave, you could have just said it." I snapped, my voice raw. "But instead, you blew it all up. Was I really that worthless?" She gave a cold little laugh. "Yeah, pretty much. I let go of you a long time ago. Staying just felt easier than facing the chaos of leaving." "David?" He was just a spark in the dark, something reckless to remind me I was still breathing. But the moment you nearly died, everything shifted. It cracked the illusion wide open. So now, unless you have something real to offer, something to justify your presence, I'm finished. I let out a laugh then, but it was hollow, lined with bitterness. She stared at me, startled, as I reached into my jacket and drew out a stack of documents. Her expression shifted when she saw what they were. Divorce papers. Her lips parted, stunned. "You're not joking?" she asked. "Not even slightly," I said, dropping them onto the table in front of her. "Either you sign, or we settle this in court. And trust me, you won't like how that plays out." "I have more than enough to bring your name down," I added. Her eyes narrowed, trying to call my bluff. "And with what exactly?" she said, leaning forward. "Medical files, eyewitness accounts, phone logs, evidence that you left me when I needed you most, lied about supporting me, and funneled our joint funds into your personal thrills. Oh, and don't pretend David didn't sneak into my hospital room after visiting hours. You forgot there are cameras in those hallways." For the first time, something cracked in her expression. Fear. Her fingers shook slightly as she picked up the documents and started flipping through them. I didn't want to drag this out. I needed it done. I wasn't asking for much, just what was mine. She could keep the house. I didn't want it. Every corner reeked of betrayal. That living room especially, the one where I lay barely conscious while she sat scrolling on her phone, indifferent. "This is insane," she murmured. "You're walking away from everything? Why? What's the angle?" "There's no trick," I told her. "Just leave me alone. No messages, no phone calls, no public sob stories. Don't twist the truth for sympathy. Keep it clean, and I keep it quiet. Cross the line, and I go public." She glared, exhaling hard. "Fine, hand me the pen." I passed it to her without a word. She signed with a clipped urgency, each motion filled with irritation and defeat. When it was done, I gathered the papers and tucked them back into my jacket. A strange stillness settled over me, like the calm after a brutal storm, heavy but final. "Get out," she snapped. "This was never your home," she added icily. I nodded, heading for the door, then stopped. "Just one last thing," I said, turning slightly. "If you run into David again, actually forget it. Do what you want." She narrowed her eyes. "What does that mean? What did you do?" I shrugged. "Let's just say that Mustang won't be taking him anywhere." And I left, closing the door behind me. On the house, the pain, the marriage that had already crumbled long before I ended up in a hospital bed. Weeks later, I heard through the grapevine that Sienna had spun a new story, told her parents I manipulated her into signing. They called, enraged about the mortgage. I didn't respond, just blocked them. Ariana fielded a few of their calls and told them the truth. After that, the Albrights fell silent. David vanished. Maybe he skipped town. Maybe he's hiding, licking his wounds. I still picture him, though, crouched beside his twisted car, broken. Did I go too far? Maybe I did. But I can't say I'm sorry. In the days that followed, I stayed with Ariana. I wrapped up the legalities, saved what I could, started to rebuild. Eventually, my mother reached out. She apologized for disappearing when I needed her most. I told her some battles are meant to be fought alone. I started therapy, dug through the wreckage, the shame, the betrayal, the grim thrill of vengeance. My therapist warned me, revenge feels powerful, but often leaves a hollow space behind. I'm still figuring out who I've become. I'm not under any illusions. I'm not the hero in this story. I became someone I never planned to be. But I made it out. And Sienna? She'll never again shrug off my suffering. That's what helps me sleep. A month after the divorce went through, a message came in from an unfamiliar account. "You humiliated me. You've always been pathetic. You think this makes you strong? I'll never forgive you." It was Sienna. I didn't answer. I closed the laptop, stepped outside. The sky was cloudless, my leg ached less than usual, and the sun warmed my face. I was still standing. I thought of David again, that image of him, broken beside the wreckage. I remembered the metal folding under the crowbar, Santiago's disappointed look, the breath I took when it was all over, shaking, painful, but mine. Yes, I'm still here, but I'm not the same. Maybe to someone else I'm the villain now, but maybe that's the price of finally taking your life back. There's no tidy ending, no final clean page. Just this: I walked away. I finished it, and I kept my dignity. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.